Today, the Commission has adopted this green paper on plastic waste. Most of the press material should already be outside. Hopefully you have most of it. And there's the green paper itself. There's our press release from today. And there's a Eurostat press release, which was from Monday, which is about municipal waste. And we're very pleased to have Jeremy Irons here today with us. We'll come to Jeremy in a moment. But first I'll pass over to Janez Poto, who will tell you a bit more about the green paper.
Thank you, Joe. Good day to everybody. Thanks for coming to this press conference. I have the pleasure today to announce the launch of the Green Paper on European Strategy on Plastic Waste in the Environment. With this paper, we ask for input from everyone, from experts and non-experts alike, on how to tackle one of the most urgent problems our society faces. For example, how to cope with the plastic waste. The reason Jeremy is here, and I'm really pleased to have you here with us today, is because he has recently produced a film, Trashed, which raises awareness of exactly that problem. In fact, Jeremy has really put heart and soul into this very important and sometimes shocking film that shows the devastating effects plastics are having on the health of our seas, our land, and even on our bodies. Sometimes, like with an inconvenient truth, for example, a film can be a game changer in people's perception, and Trashed sends a powerful message to the public and to the industry alike. Plastic production and plastic waste generation have grown exponentially since the beginning of the 20th century. Plastics is a relatively cheap, versatile material which is found in most industrial products. Unfortunately, plastic waste is also found everywhere. When it comes to marine pollution, plastic makes up on average nearly 80% of the trash found in the oceans. An estimated 10 million tons of litter, mostly plastic particles, end up in the world's oceans and seas annually, turning them into the world's biggest plastic dump. That causes a number of serious worries. Plastic waste represents a serious threat to the marine biodiversity. Microplastics are also a vehicle for endocrine disruptors entering the food chain, with potentially serious threats also to our health. Today's Green Paper wants to tackle the problem at its roots. It looks at plastic waste management as a major challenge for environmental protection, but it also stresses the huge potential plastic waste management has in making Europe more resource efficient. With this Green Paper, we invite all stakeholders to contribute with their knowledge, experience, to making plastic a truly sustainable material, avoiding any pollution through plastic. The Green Paper is looking for answers to the questions such as how, for example, we can stop landfilling plastic waste. Landfilling remains by far the main waste management option in the Union. On average, 50% of plastic waste is being landfilled. Phasing out landfilling by 2020, which is one of our objectives, will not happen if we not take the action now. Just to give you a few key aspects. Landfilling taxes have to be complemented with incineration taxes. We need to strike a fair balance between energy recovery and recycling by limiting energy recovery to absolute minimum where reuse or recycling is not the better environmental option. We need to ensure that recyclers can rely on a constant material flow at competitive prices, reinforcing recycling targets and promoting separate collection of plastic waste, which will be mandatory as from 2015, are obvious options. It is also important to increase the demand for products made from recycled plastics through the green public procurement. Last but not least, better implementation really matters. No plastic at all should escape waste management control. The high number of infringement cases on landfilling waste clearly shows that in Europe many landfills are not being managed properly. How can we more efficiently avoid plastic waste? much remains to be done in the field of waste prevention. Plastic products must be more durable, they must be repairable, and be designed in a way to be more easily reused and recycled. Producers should take on more extended responsibility for dealing with this. Consumers are also important players. Sadly, it is packaging waste, such as plastic bags and plastic bottles, that often finds its way directly into the oceans. As we pay little or nothing for such items, we attribute no value to them, despite their heavy environmental burden. Should we not find a way to reflect the environmental burden of a product better in its price, or to make the polluter pay and not the future generations? Coming back to marine litter, Jeremy's film shows very clearly that plastic waste in the oceans knows no borders. This is a global problem that requires global response. In this context, I would like to mention the forthcoming international conference on prevention and management of marine litter, which will be hosted by Germany and the Commission in Berlin in April. Let me conclude. By launching the Green Paper, the Commission is delivering a clear message. It is urgent to take action against plastic waste pollution. As a first step, we need increased awareness and a broad public debate with the involvement of all relevant stakeholders, and I'm sure that your film, Jeremy, will be an eye-opener and that it will motivate all of us to address this difficult challenge. Now, I would like to show you the trailer of the film Trashed before handing over to Jeremy.
From up here, our planet looks perfect. It's only when we look more closely that we start to see some of the results of our consumption. Does anyone know what happens to it all? This is not just a local problem.
Somehow in the deep ocean, we've got more trash than life.
We produce too much waste. We don't think about the consequences when we throw stuff away.
It seems to be a case of out of sight, out of mind.
Nature functions by building up and breaking down, building up and breaking down. We keep putting things into the environment that don't break down.
Everyone in the population today has these chemicals in their bodies.
It's everywhere.
It causes all sorts of diseases.
A woman has a way of getting rid of it. It's called having a baby.
We did it with smoking, the smoking ban. We did it with seatbelts and wearing seatbelts. We did it with drink driving, actually, when that became unacceptable. We need to do this with waste.
Perhaps times will change and we will.
You can watch the trailer anytime on YouTube if you just look for Trashed, the movie. And now, without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Jeremy.
Good morning. Thank you for giving up your time to be here. What I've tried to do is to glamorize trash. It's quite hard. It's not something that you win a lot of votes on. Trash and recycling, and there is a constant desire to talk about environmentalism rather as we talk about the arts, something that we'll do when we can afford it, when everything's going well. Just at the moment, however, the economy is in a bit of a dive, and so we can't. Of course, we can make money out of recycling. We can make money out of not burning resources constantly. It needs reorganization, and above all, it needs the will. What we see today, I think, is some of the captains, God bless you for your work, some of the captains saying, we have to stop the tanker. Now, it will take a while. It'll take probably, tankers take, 7 miles to stop. Dealing with trash in the way we deal with it now, and I refuse to call it waste. Waste is not a noun. Waste is a verb. It is what we do. We are wasting our resources. The way we deal with our trash will take a long time. There are vested interests in many countries. There is disorganization in many countries. The south of Europe will probably take longer than the north of Europe. Nevertheless, we have to put policies in place, and countries that have the organization, mine is a particular one which has the organization there, but who is doing spectacularly little about it. Those countries should be encouraged to recycle. We should aim towards zero waste. Now, of course, zero waste, like a happy marriage, never happens really, not all the time. But we may get to 75%, 80%. Let's aim for zero. Let's call it zero waste. For example, very simply, in my country, we refused to put any sort of tax on the plastic bag, which is a sort of symbol of waste, something most of us use every day and then throw away, which we don't need to. And without much alteration to our behavior, we wouldn't need them. But we don't even bother to shift that much, and government doesn't encourage us. Now, let us take Ireland. Ireland doesn't get everything right, but they seem to have got this right. They put a tax of 15 cents on every plastic bag, and in 1 year they have reduced the use of plastic bags by 92%, and the remaining 8% of plastic bags that have been bought for 15 cents have raised 12 million euros to be put into recycling within that country. So don't tell me that recycling can't make money. We need to educate people how to recycle, and we need to make sure that the comments I get constantly, which is, oh, I put all my stuff in a blue bag and some stuff in a green bag, and they put it in the lorry, but when they get to the tip, it all goes together. And in many cases, this is true because councils have not been encouraged to get the system working properly. Recycling can make money for councils. It can save an enormous amount of money. We have planning permission requests in England for 92 further incinerators. We don't call them incinerators anymore, we call them waste-to-energy plants. I would challenge that name. I know that to burn a plastic water bottle, to recycle a plastic water bottle, you save 26 times the energy that you would get if you burnt that plastic water bottle. So we're not creating energy in waste to energy, it's waste to even more waste. I hope that this little film, which I'm very proud of, produced by my friend Candida Brady, who introduced me to this subject because I'm an actor, I'm a flag waver, I'm not an environmentalist. I just try to wave a flag for situations in life which I feel are sort of getting intolerable. And I'm very proud of this film, and I hope it will make one or two people think. I hope it will make a few policymakers perhaps shift their ground, and I hope it will put power to your arm, Janez, because I know that you have been battling on about everything the film is talking about for some years, and it's a difficult thing to persuade people. So I hope we help there, and we maybe have a few time for some questions, yeah?
Yeah, we do indeed. Thank you very much, Jeremy. We'll take questions from the floor. Could you please state what media you're from and whether your question is for Janez or Jeremy or both of them? Questions?
Well, Havens, Belgian Newswire. To the Commissioner, you've mentioned that the price should reflect the environmental cost, but could you be more specific? Do you see, for instance, the tax that they've introduced in Australia and that is challenged by Coca-Cola, if my memory serves me? And to Mr. Irons, you've mentioned vested interests around the world. Would you be more specific?
It might be challenged, but the fact is that if we do not put the whole price, time will challenge that and seriously challenge. Because I think we should really understand well in which situation we are standing. The environment is the biggest, or nature if you wish, is the biggest circular economy in the world. Through the millions of years, it has learned to throw nothing away. And that's exactly how we will have to act as humans as part of that economy. And I think it's really important also that we strategically understand where Europe stands, because in those difficult economic times, we normally talk a lot about competitiveness, and rightly so. But I've never been, for example, against industrialization of Europe, but I was always for dematerialization of industry, which would keep industry in Europe. There are some facts of life which we have to factor in our decision making. One is that we are energy import dependent. Another is that we are, in many cases, resource import dependent. We import 6 times more resources than actually we export. So for us, the question of recycling or not recycling is not only a moral question. It's actually the question how we will remain stable on this competitive and even more connected world in which we are living. And I think that's important really to understand, that from the linear economy to the circular economy makes sense, makes economic sense, but of course absolutely makes also environmental sense.
The vested interests, I think, of people who deal with trash at the moment and make a lot of money out of it by burying it, often illegally, but often legally. And the people who make incinerators, who promise governments and have done for the last 20 years that they're safe. And one finds that the measuring, the monitoring of emissions happens perhaps once every 6 months for 2 weeks. And those of us who have motor cars who have to put them through the test know that we just tweak a few things and hope it gets through for that annual test. Emissions for incinerators should be monitored continually. This is scientifically quite possible, and we have a duty, I think governments have a duty to their populations to know what dangers, what microfluorons, what dioxins are being pumped into the air, falling to ground, coming into our food chain. So those are the 2 vested interests that I was meaning. I think one of the things I hope our film will do, and we're hoping to recut it to a shorter length so that it can go out to schools, because here I am in the belly of the beast, and we know about Brussels, and we know about bureaucracy, and we know about politics, and my God, it's a slow ship. But what will change things are children, because children will embarrass us at our behavior, and they will grow up to be people who take things for granted that you cannot waste in the way that we are wasting. So I hope, as I say, to get this film into schools so that some of these people with vested interests will be legislated and embarrassed out of their comfortable way of earning a living.
Thank you, Jeremy. Take one from over here. Yeah.
Chiara Spini from ANSA, talking about Southern Europe, and well, unfortunately in Italy we do not need to see movies, we have our emergency on waste management. Apparently yesterday there has been a meeting of our Italian Minister of Environment with Commissioner Potocnik. I don't know if the Commissioner would like to share some information with us about if there is any update on infringement cases and if Italy is going in the right direction to have right waste management.
Meeting actually can't be called meeting because it took 5 minutes. It was really a call from the minister where he wanted to inform me about some of the latest development. Also some connected to the Rome waste management. But what I can say, I'm just coming from European Parliament, and there is Conference Zero Waste running, and there was a gentleman, I can't exactly remember the name, it was a mayor of one of the cities in Italy, and there was another gentleman who was coming from a part of the Basque country in Spain. They are both belonging to South, but the message which they gave was so clear and so simple. If you have a vision, if you have a belief, if you want, you can do it. The figures which they showed us is actually that from the area of unbelief, from the people who did not believe, actually in 2 years they were able to shift to something which was really high level of recycling, with the plans that basically they would come to the zero waste management. So it's really the matter of organization, the will. Of course, in many cases, it is connected also with the funding, financing, where I would absolutely call for clear use of European cohesion and structural funds, especially because I have to be precise that in the future, those funds will be granted in line with the waste hierarchy. So we will absolutely not finance any of the landfilling anymore, or co-finance, better to say. But we would be more than happy to co-finance the recycling facilities which would help coming into the direction which we are promoting today.
And then you, Lorenzo.
Stephen Gardner, BNA. Commissioner Potocnik, I briefly looked through the paper. Obviously, I didn't have the consultation paper. I didn't have a chance to look at it in detail so far. But I didn't see any measures in there about cleaning up the mess that is in the environment already. Does that mean you've given up on this?
No, we haven't given up on this. Basically, if you, for example, when it comes to the land pollution, what we are doing is absolutely pushing the member states in the direction of implementing the waste legislation, which is clear. Waste legislation is prescribing waste hierarchy. So the most what they have to do is that they end pollution, then recycling, reusing, recycling, energy recovery, and landfilling. These are the bottom two options. And of course, the first thing which we have to do in some cases is get rid of illegal landfilling, which is also still the practice which we have in Europe. But it is absolutely clear that via implementing the legislation properly, we would get rid of the stocks which we have currently and the problems which are there, at least when it comes to the land pollution. When it comes to the marine litter, the situation is unfortunately a bit more complex. There, what we are doing is, in the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, we are requiring member states to take measures to reach good environmental status, also with respect to marine litter, in 2020. In the 7th Environmental Action Programme, which is basically the strategic program for our work for the next 8 years, we aim for setting EU-wide reduction target for marine litter. We also supported and followed up the idea of target setting in Rio Plus 20 conference last year. Plastic waste will be addressed in the review of the Port Reception Facility Directive that the Commission has launched, and we are implementing pilot projects to develop measures to address litter and to remove it from the sea. There are several projects concerning marine plastics litter launched also in the research framework program, and finally we are co-organizing an international conference in Berlin, which I already mentioned. So it's not a simple thing how to handle the things, but if we go broadly in a holistic way, pushing in the same direction. And of course, marine litter, it's absolutely something which you have to do globally. We can do it. We should never forget that 80% of those problems in sea is actually land-based. So we should change land-based how we are acting daily, and this is the major thing.
Thanks. Lorenzo? Sorry.
Lorenzo Consoli, TM News Italy. My question is very precise, I hope. It's on the hierarchy, the waste hierarchy, and the way it has been implemented and used in member states. I think there is a problem there. The EU has been very effective, I think, at the beginning in establishing this legislation since the beginning, and then the new version on with the waste hierarchy. That was very innovative thinking on this, but then member states have circumvented this hierarchy. Jeremy Irons was saying in Britain there are 92 new incinerators that are going to be built, or there is a plan probably for them, and they are even changing the name. Well, in Italy we have done it many years ago. We don't call them inceneritori anymore. We call them termovalorizzatori, which is the same that you've done there. I mean, this change of name shows a clear vested interest that is behind this, which is, okay, you want to get rid of waste, let's build new incinerators, new. And there was a clear lobby in the Commission for this against a strict application of the waste hierarchy. In Italy and in other countries, there was a loophole. Incinerators can get financing, public financing for 50% of what they waste, of what they burn, because it's considered as renewable energy. I mean, can you be more stupid? It's not possible that you are encouraging incinerators with the waste hierarchy, where the incinerator should be the worst option after landfills. So, do you have any criticism or any mistake that you could recognize in the way the waste hierarchy has been applied, and the fact that you are actually encouraging burning waste instead of recycling that? Because burning is considered recycling, and is not.
No, your comments are right. If you want the direct answer to incineration, those days in Europe, it's in some countries fact of life. Some countries have too big capacities for incineration. And it is also true that that is in a way driving away from the countries from proper decisions, which we are constantly advocating and supporting, that everything what has a potential to be reused and recycled, it's reused and recycled. And on the top of that, I think that with our policy of eco-design, which is actually talking about how to regulate the design which would create products which would be reusable and recyclable, then when we are designing that, we think what will happen at the end of the day with them, that with that we have the best possibility that in the longer term we would actually somehow remove even the necessity of the today's option that something is incinerated or energy recovered, if you wish. So we believe that that is the way to go. If you want the vision, which is, it's clearly written in our papers, waste generated per person should be in decline. Recycling and reuse should be at their maximum level. Incineration with energy recovery should be limited to non-reusable and recyclable materials. And last but not least, landfilling should be virtually eliminated as the waste management option. That's how it is defined. So it is true that some member states are using, I would say, the easy-go option, if you want, to get rid of the... But my advice would be, don't do that mistake, because this is a mistake which locks in some structures which are there, and that is absolutely not bringing you in line with the potential which the recycling of those materials is bringing. I was actually, to the gentleman, I was not answering 100% to what you asked, because I would need to fairly say that I'm fully supporting or taxation or anything which is moving the things in the directions which would give a clear incentive that we move in those directions. But what we have to be aware, what was the essence of those answers, is that with increasing population, with increasing per capita consumption, which is globally both happening, we have no chance to repeat some of the development stories which we have done in the privileged part of the world. No way. We have to change first, and the others should not repeat some of our mistakes. And when it comes to the waste management, the story is the same. We will need those waste, and urban mining is the best mining on which we should look in the future, because digging deeper and deeper will not give us the answers.
Thanks. Christina.
Christina, we were speaking from the ARD German Broadcasting Station. Mr. Irons, you said you weren't a green activist before you made the documentary, but in which way the movie changed your daily habits concerning trash? Do you recycle yourself, or did you change anything in your own habits?
I'm fortunate to live in a part of England, Oxfordshire, which recycles pretty well. In Ireland, they recycle very badly. They shift it around a lot on land and then eventually send it out by sea somewhere else. The Irish have not got it organised yet, which is interesting because they need employment. And one of the things that recycling does is it creates employment. So my personal habits, I've always recycled. I run old things. I live with a wife who's very, very happy that I'm not one of those people that throws things out. And I live a life like that. I run old cars. I compost what is compostable. So what's changed for me? Not a lot, really, except I sort of learnt a bit about the problem and felt a desire to pass on that knowledge through this film.
Micro.
Environmental life in Hollywood, I don't know, like, or is it really possible to live a more environmentally concerned life when you are in Hollywood a lot? I don't know if this is really adaptable, you know.
Well, it is. I mean, one of the things that gets me down is the amount of water people drink out of these plastic bottles. The huge amount. At the end of every day, you see piles of these plastic bottles. We cannot persuade supermarkets to take them back. I think we have to eventually, and then eventually maybe they'll say, well, perhaps it'll make more sense to us to sell our drinks in bottles, or indeed for studios to have drink containers with paper cups so that you can get... But it's difficult when you're working in a studio and a guy's up a gantry and wants a drink. He can't, you know, so there are problems. But what I learnt in this, for example, is that chemicals leach out of plastic into our food, into our water, that contains it. I had always thought that plastics containing our food, whether it be, were inert. I now discovered they're not. That actually those chemicals transfer into the food and into the water, encouraged by sunlight, yes, with water. Yes, my habits, I'm constantly going on about water bottles when I'm working. I don't spend a lot of time in Hollywood, but I do spend a lot of time filming. And wherever I can, and one knows that real change will happen because people like me, who I'm just a bloke, I happen to be a film actor, but I'm just a bloke, and there are a lot of blokes and women around in the world, it is their behaviour which will help have these policies put into action, because it will seem absolute common sense, and politicians will therefore, in their normal fashion, be able to follow the current mood, rather than leading They would lead and change us, but they will, so it's up to the individual.
Thanks, Jeremy. Let's just take one more question, James. Okay, we'll take two.
Yeah, James Cantor from the International New York Times. Question for Mr. Irons and for the Commissioner. The overall suggestion here is that there should be very broad pay-as-you-throw charges. So how do you ensure buy-in from the less well-to-do or those who rely on easy consumer options or who just don't really have the time in their lives to think about making the modifications, or for that matter, who don't live in pastoral places like Oxfordshire?
I don't think anybody mentioned pay as you throw. I think spend a little time as you throw. We live in a world where we seem to have less time for everything. I'm not sure how that mathematical equation works out. It seems to be true. But I think we have time for things we think are important. We still eat, we still make love, most of us make our beds and send our clothes to be washed. So why can't we sort our rubbish? It's only organization. I don't think, I think that there is, for instance, people who live in large tower blocks. It's quite difficult to separate into the 7 or 8, really, separations we should be making so that we can have clean recyclability. You know, mixed recyclables don't make any money because they're mixed and they have to be unmixed. So we have a huge responsibility as individuals, but I don't think it would cost. Certainly wouldn't cost me. It doesn't cost me anything to put out my separate bins and to put things into my separate bins, and I actually get rather a pleasure from it. Because I think if people are made aware of the damage to environment, that they're just thinking, trash is trash is trash, put it all in a bin and throw it away and it's gone. If they're made aware of the follow-on to that, then I think maybe like me, they'll get a pleasure from, you know, it's like sort of parking within the parking bay, isn't it? You know, it just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more trouble, but actually it means that everyone else can park and it means that the thing works. And you're not fined.
Yeah, no, just to say briefly, because none of us mentioned exactly that. In the waste hierarchy, one of the things which we are expecting from the member states first, it's that they would, I think it's this year, end of this year, that they would prepare waste prevention plans, because I think that's really important to be. And this, we call it extended producer responsibility. If I try to demystify it, what does it actually mean? First, it means that producer accepts returned products at the end of their life. Then the information is provided to the consumer on the extent of which the product is reusable and recyclable. And as I mentioned before, already better design of products is encouraged to reduce their environmental impact, make them durable, repairable, reusable, make them more suitable for proper safe recovery if they would become a waste. I think all that is and should be part of our philosophy. And via that, you, as Jeremy rightly said, it's a tanker. So we don't deal with something which you can move like that. But if you steer in the right direction, you can certainly move. And more on the local level, we find examples like two from Italy and Spain, which I mentioned before, where you can really prove that with a goodwill and good spirit, with determination, you can shift those small vessels faster than the tanker itself. I think then we can really move.
And what better time to do it than now? The world is shaken because they realize that, that unadulterated consumerism will not work. We've seen it fall apart. We still have the old guard saying, let's just get it going again and we'll all be fine. But actually, those who have any sort of understanding of human nature and of life realize that what we have to develop is a sustainable economy, not a growing economy. And if we're to have a sustainable economy, we have to make things that last. and not reckon to have our car for a couple of years and then trade it in. Let's have a car that lasts 20 years. We've sent a man to Mars or to the moon or somewhere, I remember hearing. We can surely make a car that lasts and which can be repaired. And if we want to create employment, then let's train people to repair instead of us throwing away these unrepairable objects. And I think now is the time to really begin to think, what sort of world do we want? Because the old model, certainly in this part of the world, hasn't worked very well.
We take one last question, Bruno.
Bruno Waterfield, Daily Telegraph. Mr. Potocznik, I understood that this green paper was supposed to be accompanied by legislation on one-use plastic bags, and that seems to be delayed. And will that legislation be prevented in the first semester of this year, and why has it been delayed? Mr. Irons, I mean, there is a middle-class distaste with the vulgarities of the common herd and its materialism, or rather a rather old hat. How do you suggest that you can convert people to what you described as the pleasures of recycling without forcing them through higher taxes that will actually hit the poorest people in our society the hardest?
There was actually not the plan to present those two things on the same day. We are working parallelly on the legislation which would basically address the single use of plastic bags. We think it's an important issue. There are some things which we still have to clarify. We are considering different policy options. But yes, my plan is to go on with the legislation, presenting a legislative proposal also on the single use of plastic bags.
I'm appalled that you think it's classist in any way to try to create a sustainable economy. I'm appalled that you think that anybody of any particular strata in society gets more pleasure than any others buying things. It's a human condition that we like to buy things. We've been told for generations that it makes us happy. That, of course, is the great consumer lie, and one that we have to counteract as we educate the next generations. I don't believe that recycling will cost the granny in the street, the poor person in the street, will cost anybody any extra money. I think it will improve our standard of living, and because it will overall be saving the countries who go into this process of recycling our resources, it will save them billions of pounds. That will be reflected on every member of that community.
And if this is not convincing enough, we don't have other option.
Yeah.
We'll end it there. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Janez. So from the belly of the beast, good afternoon.